Right after Jane's attack on Saturday, August 6th, 1988, TV, media, and newspaper articles were being kept from her as she recovered. She never saw any of the immediate news articles that were published. In this episode, with her permission of course, I take her back to what I've found in published articles about her case. She learns some new things and helps to give clarification on fact versus what was published. Here's our conversation. Welcome to Invisible Tears. I'm Amanda, your co-host, or one of your co-hosts, I should say, of Invisible Tears. And today I'm here with Jane. How's it going, Jane?
Hey, it's going good. How's it going, Amanda?
It's going good. Busy.
Yes. Very.
Yes. Super busy, but that's awesome. We love it. So excited to be back and doing this.
I know.
I know. So today I asked Jane to hop on with me. And the purpose of this is because I went and actually got a subscription to newspapers.com. So if those of you have not heard of it, it's very cool. It's a database, and you can essentially go back to the early 1900s and research topics and that sort of thing. Now, I do have to make sure and say, especially specific to what I looked up, that unfortunately the Keene Sentinel isn't in that database. So just as a heads up, it doesn't give you every single newspaper. I was hoping that it would be close. So unfortunately, we don't have any references from the Keene Sentinel for the purposes that I looked up. I know it's weird, right?
Yes, very.
Yeah.
That is very weird.
Yeah. So especially since it's such a big paper for that area. So unfortunately, the Keene Sentinel isn't included in this conversation. So we would have to literally go in and do some work on like microfiche. Oh, so if somebody listening wants to go in and do some of that work for us, hey.
Yeah, really.
Because that's just, obviously extremely time consuming. But what I did with this subscription was I was very drawn for the first name to put in, Jane's. So
My name in first.
Your name in first.
I wonder why.
I know. I don't know why I was trying to do that. Yeah. So I searched up Jane's name and I made it from 1988. So far, I've made it through 2005.
Wow.
Yep. So many articles were in there. And I was like, I want to see what some of the original publications were saying, right? Around the original time of your attack. I wanted to get you a little bit of a better timeline based off of what I could find from the newspapers.
Now, were these articles local or just all over the place?
These
geographical?
Great question. So they were mostly local to your area and the area of your attack. However, I do have a list of all the different publications that I was able to pull articles from. So those guys are, let's see, the Boston Globe. Look at Jane's face. She's like, what? The Boston Globe? And it wasn't just one article about you, Jane. The Boston Globe covered your case. The Concord Monitor. Obviously, we know that that's been around for a while in New Hampshire. The Berkshire Eagle. It's a newspaper out of Pittsfield, Mass. The Lewiston Daily Sun out of Maine. The Recorder out of Greenfield, Mass. The Republican out of Springfield, Mass. The Valley News of Vermont.
Yeah.
The Sun Journal. I believe that's out of Vermont too. I can look that up though. The Brattleboro Reformer. The Journal Tribune. The Bennington Banner. The Rutland Daily Herald. The Burlington Free Press, and the Morning Sentinel, which is a publication out of Waterville, Maine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So again, a ton of resources. I know that this is in all of the papers. So I was bummed once I realized that the Sentinel wasn't in there, but I still was able to grab a ton of wealth of information. So what I wanted to do today with you, Jane, was I sort of wanted to go through the progression about what I found, where it was posted, and just sort of get your reaction and maybe possibly ask you some questions about some of the things that were actually in the newspaper. because I know that sometimes things that are put in newspapers, maybe it's possibly just, a reporter fabricating or something like that, I want to go back to the source. I, I want to go back.
Okay.
I want to go back to the original source, and just sort of maybe even give you a little bit of a better timeline about like what happened, what was publicly being put out there about you and about your case, when connections first started developing, that sort of thing. I have a really good timeline about when when you were first interviewed based off of those newspapers, and when your composite was done, and that sort of thing too. So,
Wow.
yeah.
You've done some research.
I've done some digging. And so, interestingly enough, the first article that I could find in this database that broke about what happened to you, Jane, was actually in the Boston Globe.
Really?
Yes. And it was published on August 7th.
Oh, that was the next day.
Yep.
Holy crap.
I know. And even though,
Published on the 7th,
yes.
because
published-
I was attacked late on the 6th.
yes.
Wow.
I know. So even though it was a paragraph, right? It was a paragraph that was put out there. So it wasn't a huge article or anything, but they did mention you, and they did mention your name, and they did mention your age. Yeah, that's another thing that I have to put out there. In every single article, Jane's full name was used. It was stated that you survived. It was also stated in almost every single article which hospital you were taken to.
Wow.
And in many, not all of them, but many of the articles, it was also stated that your baby survived as well. So that was known very, very, very early on, within a day or two.
I wonder how they got that information. Hospital.
Yeah. Hospital spokesperson, probably.
Yeah.
And possibly even talking with some of the local police as well, I think. So going along with that too, every article that was published from August 8th for the next few days, every single article mentioned you and mentioned another woman called Sharon Johnson. Now, another good thing that I think that it's good that we're going through and doing this. I mean, obviously, Jane, you were focused on surviving. You weren't focused on the publications. Actually, media and newspapers was being kept away from you. So I just want to make sure and give you a sense of what was actually out there in the public too, as you were going through and appropriately focusing on surviving and healing this ordeal. So Sharon Johnson was a woman from Bow, New Hampshire that was 7 months pregnant that was found murdered 2 weeks prior to your attack. So she was found July 29th, 1988 at a construction site in Bedford, New Hampshire. And she had been stabbed and she had been strangled. And so now the interesting piece about this, so each of the articles that I pulled up from August 8th, obviously for the next few days, just generally speaking, they were naming both of you, but they were naming the separate situations to both of you. Never once was a law enforcement person quoted in actually saying that you guys were linked, ever. It was actually the media doing it.
Really?
Because they're like, what are the chances? Stuff like this doesn't happen in New Hampshire. 2 weeks apart, 2 pregnant women are stabbed. One of them was murdered. One of them survived. So it was actually the media trying to make more of a connection, and law enforcement, even the AG's office, they were pretty good at making sure that they put out there, we don't know if there's any links between the 2 women. We're investigating the cases separately. Obviously, luckily, Jane survived, and hopefully we'll get more answers and that sort of thing. But it was really interesting to see all the articles that I could pull up in this database, literally mentioning it. It was almost like a write-up about her, a write-up about you. It was like, yeah. Did you ever know about this woman?
I did not. I did not. I mean, every article that I was able to read, because everybody kept everything from me.
Yep.
But every article that I was reading was linking me to Eva Morrison, Ellen Freed, and Linda Moore, and Barbara Agnew,
Yep.
and Bernice, and all them. So that's a new name. I have not heard that name before.
Yep. And if I'm not mistaken, what ended up happening with her case, I believe this case ended up being solved.
Maybe that's why it was never brought up in the media again.
Yeah, I think based off of like the initial reports, there were lots of witnesses that could place her at a place having an argument that evening. And so they were trying to identify this, this individual and that sort of thing. Um,
How old was she?
she was 37 when
Oh,
she was, yep, when she was attacked, stabbed 14 times, and strangled. When they found her at that rural construction site, she had been shopping for baby clothes. That breaks my heart.
mhm.
Um, and I believe that she was found without her shirt on.
Yeah.
Jason Carroll was convicted of Sharon Johnson's murder, but he insists he is innocent and has been wrongly imprisoned for decades. Yeah. So interestingly enough, I think that's why like nobody's brought it to you. You hadn't really heard anything about it, right? It was because it really seemed like it was a different trajectory. I mean, of course,
Yeah.
both of you women were stabbed at night, you know what I mean? But I think very quickly early on, investigators had witnesses and had some sort of other lead in a direction to actually solving her case. So,
Yeah. Obviously, they had way more evidence and witnesses and stuff in her case where they never connected mine and hers because they already knew that hers was totally separate.
right, right. But yeah, so even though law enforcement was good about making sure to say like, no, we're making sure to investigate separately. We don't think, even though there are similarities, we don't think this is linked. There was an inkling as early as August 8th that they weren't denying the fact that you could possibly be linked to other Connecticut River Valley murders
Yep.
as early as August 8th. Another thing, too, was that even on an article from August 8th, and this was actually in the Concord Monitor, Dennis's full name was published.
Really?
Yep. And it was said that you had told him that the person that attacked you obviously didn't know this person, but that he was older, balding, and drove a dark pickup. Just
Pickup?
kept on. Yeah. So I don't know. That very well may have just been a
In a
series of telephone.
yeah.
Yeah. Also in this article, your friend's house that you drove to,
Mhm.
his full name was published.
No.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I'm really glad that, within the journalism space, there's so much more cognizance about protection.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure and throw that, certainly not to upset you, but just like let you know and make you aware that, like, yeah, even that early on, other people, not just you, it was being publicly noted that your baby survived. And it wasn't in a ton of, it was actually only one of these articles that I actually found Dennis's full name. And then your friend's house that you drove to, his full name as well. But yeah, that was for public information was out there. Um,
What were they thinking back then?
I
I mean,
don't,
was it just like all about the story? We got to get the story out. The more information, the better. I mean, what were people think? Did they even, if you are a journalist,
Mhm,
please explain this to me.
right.
Why in God's name do you think your article is going to be any better using victims' names, victims' families' names that has not been published or has not been thrown out there by the family? I
Mhm.
mean, do you honestly think that your article is going to be way better than anybody else's? I mean, I was all over the place. I survived. My killer has never been found. But yet, the day after, they choose to put my name in the paper everywhere.
Mhm.
What does that accomplish? Does that make you better than any other paper when you do that? If
Right.
you are a journalist, please explain this to me because
Yeah.
I don't understand it.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah.
And it angers me. It
Yeah.
so angers me because I'm not the only one that this has been done to. You
Right.
know,
Mhm.
they don't do it anymore. I
Mhm.
understand that. They don't. If a victim survives, they do not put the name in the paper.
Yep.
But it's just back then, what were they thinking?
I don't know. I don't know. I wasn't surprised because I know that you had already given me the heads up that very
Mm,
publicly and first very early on that your name was plastered everywhere. Some of the pieces that did surprise me was how publicly it was stated that your baby survived. And then
yeah,
even in some of those articles, yes, some other people's full names being disclosed that were related to you. I mean, it did surprise me to see that information out there. I didn't want to upset you, but I just wanted to
oh,
give you
you're
the
not
heads up.
upsetting me, but I mean, this people need to know this crap. You know,
Hmm. Yep.
it's like I don't know. I just media, newspaper, oh, the news. Sometimes they just don't. They don't think.
Yeah.
They don't. Their only mind frame is getting the story out there.
Hmm.
And if they could use a little compassion towards people like
Yep.
me,
Yep.
that would go a long way.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
Uh,
Absolutely. I mean, don't get me wrong. I definitely get to that. I'll eventually get to, especially within the timeline too, those articles where it was very clear that you were meeting up with people that were compassionate. And the tone of the article was very much, once you were finally actually taking individual interviews and things like that. I will make sure and call those people out. Thank you.
okay.
They definitely did, you know, do you justice. And you could tell they were compassionate about what you were going through. And, gave you your quotes and things like that. So we won't completely start trashing the newspapers. Not by any means. As you were talking about, just making sure to like get the story out there and stuff like that. Another consistent thing that I noticed, and I think I understand the logic behind this probably, the number of times that you were actually stabbed drastically varied in every single article.
Oh, probably.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably because of them truly not knowing,
Yeah.
you know, because now we know it's 27 times. So based off of any article that anybody reads, from back then, or if people start digging, kind of like I did too. Um, some said 12, some said 16, some 19, some 22, some. So we'll just put that out there that regardless of whatever that was actually put out in the articles.
27 times. And I'm going to tell you, I'll even share why I know that for a fact. Because obviously I can't see all my stab wounds.
Yep.
But when I got home from the hospital, Dennis was helping me a lot because I was still like fragile. I was still healing from my wounds.
Hmm.
And I said, I was undressing in the room one day. Dennis was helping me with my bra. And I said, count. And he was like, count. I said, yeah, count the stab wounds. I want to know. I
Hmm.
can't see them all. I want to know. And ugh, I'm going to get emotional about this.
Oh,
Every time he counted and the number went up, I got emotional and he was emotional.
I'm sure. Oh, I'm getting emotional
And it
here.
was, I think that was when reality really set in, is
Yeah.
when we literally counted my stab wounds.
Yeah.
And then I was like, wow, I survived that. Holy shit. But
Jesus.
so that's That's how I know
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
exact amount of stab wounds I received. So
Straight from the source right there.
straight from the source.
I can't imagine
Mm.
that. Wow.
Well, I haven't thought about that in a long time.
I'm hoping I'm not going to take you on too much of an emotional roller coaster. We're going to have to video chat after this. I'm going to have to give you some Reiki. Oh. We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors. And now back to our episode. I know that you had actually previously said before too that you weren't sure like how long you were in surgery.
Yeah, no, I have no idea. Yeah.
So I did find an article that was published on the 8th from the Berkshire Eagle. And there was a quote from Cheshire Medical Center's spokeswoman that actually said that you were in emergency surgery for 7 hours.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So
Wow.
again, I had seen a little bit of a variation from that, but given that that was so close to the, it was just within a couple of days, and given who the woman was, I would think that she would probably have the most accurate information.
Absolutely. So. Absolutely. That's interesting that they were doing press conferences. Is that what they were doing?
It doesn't appear as if they were doing press conferences, but it seemed like every so often they would release a piece of information, answering phone calls and answering whatever they could from like the newspaper publications and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Early on too, it was pretty consistently quoted that the time you stopped at Gamarlos was 12:30 a.m.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just as and it wasn't until a little bit later where the time range where it started becoming a time range of between 11:30 and 12:30. So just as a heads up, like I consistently saw that too in the early articles. So it may have been, well, you've explained that after your attack, once you finally made it to safety, you have explained how long it took the ambulance to get there.
Yes.
So in my mind, of course, this is just conjecture. I don't have exact details about that, but that's where my mind went, is that the police were trying to sort of work it backwards, like the timeline backwards. So that could be where that range sort of came from.
Yeah.
I guess.
I'm guessing that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was quite a bit of time between the time I was attacked and the time rescue came. I mean, well, you figure I was attacked and then I had to get up and get to my car and drive down the road, and they had to call rescue, and then rescue took forever to get here. And so, yeah, I would say that would be about accurate.
Yeah. Yep. So that was interesting. And I think that's probably the little bit of the reason for the discrepancy, possibly in timeline as well. It was first originally quoted in the Boston Globe on Tuesday, August 9th, that Lieutenant Richard A. Foote, the commander of the New Hampshire State Police in Troop C in Keene, was able to interview you the prior day. So that was the specific quote that he gave to the newspaper. So I know that he was
the day after my attack.
Well, yep. So
the prior day. So that would be the 8th.
Yep. So the first day that you saw law enforcement come into you would have been, yes, Monday, August 8th. Yep. And then after he gave that quote on Tuesday, August 9th, your composite went live out into the papers on Wednesday, August 10th. It was a slew. Everybody had it. And then along with the description, it basically said, and sometimes there was a little bit of variation, but it basically all said pretty much the same thing. The attacker was blonde, clean shaven, white man between the ages of 32 and 40 with a medium build between 5'6", 5'8", weighing between 150 to 160. It almost looked like it was a copy and paste. That was the, that was essentially going out everywhere. As early as Friday, August 12th, there was a specific mention in the papers about you possibly being connected to Barbara Agnew.
Oh, and that was the 12th. So about a
Yep.
week later.
Yep. So it was interesting because so the Journal Tribune, the Sun Journal, and the Valley News all reported on it. The Valley News was the first one to also name not just Barbara, but named Bernice, Ellen, and Eva as well.
Yeah.
So the general approach was that law enforcement was just saying the way you were approached and the way you were attacked was so similar. That's when they started publicly putting that out there. Yeah. So, I mean, it was 6 days. It was 6 days after your attack.
Not a whole lot of time to figure something like that out, is it?
Nope. The first time that Linda Moore was brought into the conversation was the next day. So 7 days after your attack. It's also the first time that the description of the vehicle was released. And it was a broad description, just basically stating at the time, golden brown Jeep Wagoneer. We've gone over in detail possible, variations of the color and even possibly Jeep Wagoneer or some sort of make that looked very similar. And this piece was super interesting, especially because I know this individual. Did you ever know that there was a reward offered for information leading to your arrest?
Yes, through the Monadnock shopper.
Yes. Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Yep.
$1,000, I believe it was.
Yep. $1,000 reward from the owner. Yep. And he was quoted everywhere was saying, "I'd get $1,000 worth of pleasure to see this guy caught."
Yeah.
Yep. I saw that and I was like, oh, bitch.
Yeah, that was pretty incredible. Now they don't have the Monadnock shopper anymore, do they?
That I'm not positive about.
They do. Oh.
I think they do.
They do.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm looking at the paper right now.
Yep, I think they do. I'm not sure I'm sure if they do, I'm sure he's still involved in some way, or he may still be the owner. I'm not sure, but yep.
Yeah, that was what, about a year after or something, or a couple of months.
It was August 20th, 1988.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I remember seeing that.
Yep. Yep. So within a couple of weeks, people offering rewards on your behalf. The first interview that I could find, and again, it sucks that the Sentinel wasn't a part of this database, but one of the first interviews that I could find where you were like individually sat down with like a reporter. So you had obviously already left the hospital, you were home and that sort of thing. It was with the Rutland Daily Herald, and you were interviewed on Thursday, September 22nd of 1988, and it was published the following day.
September 22nd?
Yep. Yeah. Author of that article, her name was Anne Marie Christensen.
Yes.
Do you remember her?
I remember that. I remember her. Yes. She was so nice.
I could tell. The way she wrote that article.
Oh my gosh, I haven't heard that name in so long. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh, if you're listening, please contact me. Oh, I want to talk to you again. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Sometimes trips down memory lane are good, huh?
Oh, they are. Wow. Yes. She did a very good article.
She really did. She really did. And that's why I wanted to make sure and preface earlier in our conversation and be like, I'm not attacking the reporters. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, of course, we've mentioned the name, identity, and that sort of thing being disclosed, but unfortunately it was happening with everybody at the time. But I did encounter some articles where it was very clear that they spent time with you and they really wrote a compassionate piece. You could clearly tell that she felt a ton of compassion for you.
Yes.
And did you justice with a lot of really good quotes too. I mean, the tone of the interview, it was still really clear that you had a ton of fear. quoted in saying things like, I think about him every day. I'm scared. I have to live with this the rest of my life. I don't know where he is. I don't know if he's coming back for me, that sort of thing. Since this article was so in depth too, it was interesting. So there was a couple of other pieces in there that I just kind of wanted to call out. I know that you've said before that you're not like, you don't remember like which direction he was possibly coming from, or even if he actually did pull in. But in this article, you did say that you remember him pulling into the parking lot, like just as a heads up.
Oh,
So I know that Drew has sort of inkled, like, do you think that he was actually waiting for you if you don't know if he actually pulled in or if you weren't noticing? So that was actually written in the article. Just as a heads up, because you even said you didn't know if he followed you from the fair.
yeah.
So, which is logical, right? In this article, you did say that the details were still in bits and pieces. You were still trying to like piece it together, which makes complete sense given how soon after your attack this article was done. This wasn't a direct quote from you. I just don't know how this phrase got into this article, but it did say that, like, I remember you in telling your story about the attack, how you said that you saw someone drive by, right? We know a person drove by.
Yeah.
You're trying to get their attention. This article said 5 people drove by.
But no.
No. Okay, good.
No.
Like, they said about 5
No,
cars
no.
drove by during your attack.
No.
Okay, good. All right.
No, that's misunderstood totally. No.
Okay.
One.
Got it. One. Got it.
Yeah.
Yes. In this article, they weren't just talking to you. They're also trying to grab more specific quotes from like law enforcement and stuff like that too. And they're trying to go into different like sections. And I'm sure as I'm explaining this, you're remembering this article too. A Vermont State Detective Ted LeClaire was quoted in the article referencing your possible connection to Barbara and some of the Connecticut River Valley attacks. It was interesting. He said, it takes a very special type of person to do that crime. If we had 6 homicides that involved multiple stabbings, and if 6 different people were doing that, we'd be tripping over bodies. This is not the Bronx. It's a crime unique to Vermont and New Hampshire.
You know, I do remember reading that. And I guess in my mind, they're all connected.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But I also have to look at it logically.
Right.
And in my mind, the only way they're ever going to solve any of these is still to investigate them individually. So in my mind, they have to investigate these cases individually in order to solve. Once they solve one, they're going to solve, I believe they're going to solve at least 4 or 5 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll be connected. But they, there's so many skepticals, so many people that are so skeptical to call it one killer. Mm-hmm. And, he's right when he said that. I mean, obviously, think about it.
Yeah.
They may not have all the same exact, what do I want to say?
There may be specific pieces that are slightly different between each of the cases.
Especially location.
Yep, exactly. But there are a lot of pieces that are similar.
Yes.
So
connected.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what was funny was in that article, like that was a direct quote, like it was in quotations. So, I mean, they were taken verbatim exactly what he said.
So he, in so many words, is saying this is a serial killer.
Yes.
This is all connected.
Mm-hmm.
In so many words.
Yes. Yep. And unfortunately, I know that a couple of years after your attack is when this detective, Ted LeClaire, I know that he passed away. Because there were other articles that had quoted Mike LeClaire, his brother, who ended up joining in on the case as well. I believe
of Vermont.
Yes, of Vermont. I believe they were initially working on it together, almost like some of the separate cases, and then he took over the work for his brother. Ted after he passed away.
I think they were both involved with the task force.
Yep. Yes.
So,
That's going to be I have all these like key word searches that I'm going to be, all these keyword terms I'm going to be looking up. I can't wait to see the detail I pull up about that. But yeah, as far as we know, the task force was formed in 1986.
so that was before my attack.
Yes.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of different dates thrown out there for that.
Yeah. I believe that's the date that we have, and I'm trying to remember exactly where it was referenced. I think that reference came directly from John Philpin, because I know that we have it referenced on our timeline on our website.
So as soon as I was attacked, they were all over it.
Yeah.
They were like, that's why.
Yep.
That's why they come to such a quick conclusion like that. Because I'm definitely not near Claremont or Saxon's River or any of that.
Yep.
So that's probably why they were already investigating all those connected. And then all of a sudden mine happened.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Has to be why that. I mean, as I was sitting there and I was researching, I was like, very early on, there was I was like, even like 2 days after your attack, there was like that inkling, like, oh, she may have connection to other cases. I was like, why would they drop that? But they would be so adamant about keeping you and the other pregnant woman like separated. I was like, why would they drop that as sort of like an inkling? And it had to be because the task force was already formed. But I'll definitely do some work on researching the task force as well. In this article, they also brought up they also brought up that you didn't have any police protection at your home, but very quickly was like, but she's never alone, right? I like read it and I was like, oh my God, why would you put that out there?
I remember seeing that. I do remember seeing that.
But then they were like, oh, but she's never alone, right? And then they questioned police, and Sergeant Clay Young actually was quoted in saying, there's just no way we can protect her. We don't have enough people. But then added that they've been in touch constantly with you, and you know that they were totally available if you needed them.
That was Clay Young?
Yep.
Wow. I haven't heard that name in a long time either.
Yep.
Holy crap. It's almost like a blast from the past.
We're going down memory lane here. Yep. So, and then in this article too, they went and spoke with the owner of Gamarlos a little bit and went and spoke with some people at Gamarlos. So Mike Gamarlo, the owner at the time, stated that after your attack, he installed more flood lighting. Obviously, I think everybody knew that. In this article, they also stated that a gray-haired cashier who was not named in the store said that 2 women were working late stocking shelves that night up until 12:30 a.m. So your attack must have happened like right after that. But the owner denied that and said that nobody was working late. So, yeah. So we've confirmed that nobody was working late in the store that night.
No.
Okay. That was interesting.
That was looked into before too.
Okay, cool.
I think Dark Minds, Phelpsy, also looked into that too.
Okay.
So,
all right. And then a piece of the article sort of ended with it appeared as if journalists were in the parking lot taking pictures, and a woman pulled up and said, are you, reporting on the young woman that got stabbed? And when they said that they were, and they were collecting photographs, the woman said, I know who did it, and gave the reporter an actual name. Of course, it wasn't published. And when they were like, well, how do you know this? She explained that she was a rural mail carrier and a part-time bartender at the American Legion in Keene. And about a week after your attack, 3 women were sitting at the bar and talking about the composite that had been published. And they were comparing it to someone that they had encountered in the Legion, as she's nodding her head. This man was known to have exposed himself to women and demonstrate violent behavior. But when she was asked by the reporter if she reported it, she said no, because she was scared. So as you're nodding, as I'm saying this, it had to have already been checked out, correct?
yes, it was.
Yeah.
Very shortly after that, I even called quite a few times and confirmed it.
Okay.
He was already, he was already eliminated.
Gotcha.
Yeah, investigated and eliminated.
Gotcha.
That was just, yeah, one of those. Oh, he looks like the composite, so it must be him.
Right. Exactly. Oh yeah, this guy's weird. Oh yeah, yeah, he's kind of violent. It's got
Yeah,
to be him,
yeah,
sort of thing. Yep.
yeah.
All right. Also in this article, Sergeant Young actually said that they received on average, about 100 calls a day.
Yeah,
So, and he
yeah.
also was quoted in that article as saying that he would kill for a license plate number. You ended up getting him a partial 4.5 months later. So,
Yeah.
and so as I kept on going through, just as a complete and absolute side note, your baby shower was publicized in the paper as well. I found it. I found the publication about it.
Oh, I had two.
Oh, all right. This one was from the VFW, Ladies
Yeah, I
Auxiliary.
had one down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. Do you
I
have?
didn't miss a goddamn thing.
I looked up everything, everything that was in the database, right? Do you have any questions so far with anything that I've brought up or anything that I've said or anything that I can answer for you? Because it's going to fast forward a little bit.
Yeah, when did they put in the paper that I was released from the hospital?
They didn't.
Oh, they didn't.
Yes. So I think they learned their lesson a little bit. And it probably, I don't know, maybe it came from law enforcement, maybe it came from the hospital, but so you were regularly, every so often they would update on your status, right? Oh, okay, she's stable. Oh, okay, she's not critical anymore. Oh, okay, she's healing. They never put when you were released,
Oh,
ever. And actually, in one of the articles that was probably 4 or 5 days after your attack, they made sure and mentioned that you had a guarded room.
oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yep. So it wasn't released when you were released, which I was happy to
Yeah,
see. Right.
yeah.
But that's a great question. Or at least it wasn't released. I don't know if it was released in the Sentinel, but because I haven't gotten into the Sentinel, but I hope it
I
wasn't.
think it was because I got released, and then the day after is when the hospital said, "Oh, she's already gone home."
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, I think I'm pretty sure it was in the Keene Sentinel.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. And that's the only reason why it kind of stinks that the Sentinel's not in this database that I got, because I know
Yeah.
specific to this and specific to your case and specific to the Connecticut River Valley cases, there definitely would be a ton of coverage in there.
Oh, Keene Sentinel did a lot of articles, ton of articles.
So I think we might have to spend some time at the library. With microfiche. Yep. Because I don't know how else to get this stuff.
I think so too.
Yep. All right. Do you have any other questions about anything that I might have seen, or did I see this, or did I see that, or
Trying to think. No, not really.
not yet?
Not yet. Well, you did jog the memory quite a bit, though. Holy crap!
I know, I can see it in your face.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors. And now back to our episode. All right. So now we're going to fast forward to February 11th, 1992.
Ew.
That's when the next big series of stuff starts circulating around, because Unsolved Mysteries has aired and the articles start swirling. So after Unsolved Mysteries aired, an Idaho law enforcement officer phoned up the New Hampshire officers, submitting a tip after they saw the Unsolved Mysteries composite, saying that it looked like somebody they had arrested and was currently incarcerated in regards to a, quote, similar crime. New Hampshire had said that they would look into it, but by all accounts, it didn't go anywhere. And it was interesting because some of the tones of the article said that law enforcement was like, oh, great, a tip. And some of the tone of some of the articles was like, Like they didn't. Some said it was like, oh yeah, it was submitted by law enforcement, so it's credible. So we're, it's a good tip. And some of them were like, okay, it's probably one of 5,000 people that look like this, sort of thing. So, and there was also some articles where it was like, it's hard to figure out what this person was actually incarcerated for. Obviously, they didn't release his name. But some articles said he was incarcerated for the murder of a woman, and some said he was being held on robbery charges and was being implicated in some murders. So a huge, big like mixed bag reception from law enforcement about that tip, and also about unsolved mysteries actually being put out simply because of the whole serial killer theory. So it's not like any of them completely rejected that theory, but they're like, okay, unsolved mysteries, like this is the general tone that I think was coming from law enforcement. Some were like, it doesn't hurt, it's getting these cases out there. And some were like, they did it for theatrics sort of thing, because there's no like solid link between these cases. I mean, all of them said that unsolved mysteries that it was significantly generating tips, and they were happy about that. So it's not like they were knocking unsolved mysteries at all, but they were like,
they're the ones that came to me about doing unsolved mysteries.
Right. So
they're the ones that wanted to do it.
Yep.
And I think it was more Vermont than New Hampshire.
Yep. In just generally speaking, the tone that I found between Vermont and New Hampshire, it seems like, and I know this is a very broad, generalization. It seems like Vermont was very much more open to keeping an open mind about keeping the cases connected and understanding that we investigate each of the cases separately and then they'll possibly connect, about like having that like vocalness about it. In New Hampshire was much more closed off, and there's no proof of that. Sort of.
New Hampshire was just closed off on everything. Yeah. And they still are. I mean, New Hampshire does not want to work with anybody. They don't want to share information. They don't want to ask for tips. It's like, but Vermont did at the time. They wanted these cases solved, and every little bit of information they were using and they wanted.
Yeah.
And
yeah. So, and that's why I wanted to like make sure and like bring that up to you too, was that like the tone of the articles based off of the officers that were spoken to, it was interesting because of how much of a mixed bag, because I remember you telling me that they asked you to do unsolved mysteries. And so it was like,
they came to me.
It's all of a sudden like they came to you to do it. Oh yeah, it'd be great to get this out there. And then the tone of the articles afterwards are like, oh, well, we didn't like how the message that was like put out there. It's like, well, what? No. And it wasn't like they were, like I said, it wasn't like they were attacking unsolved mysteries at all. It was more of they had to sort of present the theory for theatrics, is what they were saying. How many tips do you think that unsolved mysteries generated, according to law enforcement?
I heard over 100.
800 is what was put in the papers.
Wow.
That's quoted from law enforcement.
Wow.
Yeah. That's pretty cool, huh?
Yeah.
Yep.
What'd they do with it? What did they do with that information? Those tips.
I know.
That's why people were coming to my door. I bet half those people that called in tips to unsolved mysteries came knocking on my door because they weren't getting any traction from the law enforcement.
Yep.
Betcha.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So articles swirl about unsolved mysteries and the potential tips from that. And then we fast forward to the end of the year, December 29th of 1992, because the Valley News published an article about the book that was published. So, so Philip Ginsberg's book, The Shadow of Death, The Hunt for a Serial Killer, was actually published. And so what this article did was it summarized the book, it interviewed Ginsberg, and it also took the opportunity to interview law enforcement in reaction to his book as well.
Now, when was that put out?
So this article was published December 29th, 1992.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So this was the first, and again, unfortunately, without the Sentinel, but this was the first time where I saw it completely, like generally speaking, combining the other 7 cases. So a total of like 8 cases, right? All in one cohesive like spot. So this was the first place where I was like, oh, okay. So I really think that like possibly like the publication of that book where everything was outlined and laid out and sort of covered was the first place where typical timelines and typical links with the cases. This is where it was all essentially summarized for the first time, is what I think.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. In those, I mean, just to recount, who was in that book was first victim as Joanne Dunham was in that book. And I know that commonly right now, commonly within the conversation, she's not linked. However, she was found in 1968. She was from Charleston, disappeared while actually en route to her school bus, was found in Unity. So Joanne Dunham was the first person that was covered in that book. And then we have Kathy Milligan, Elizabeth Betsy Critchley, Bernice Cornemarsh, Ellen Freed, Eva Morse, Linda Moore, Barbara Agnew, and then, of course, Jane was covered extensively in that book. So he worked with law enforcement and definitely had access to all the police reports, interviewed them, took on their opinions. I know he interviewed you too as well, Jane. It was a huge article that was actually written about it. But the interesting piece was that that was the only publication that I could see that actually put out something. Not a singular other paper actually put out something about it.
What paper was that?
It was the Valley News.
I wonder if somebody must have contacted them to do an article.
Yep.
I'm not gonna assume. I'm not gonna guess. I have a couple of names, but
yep. Yeah, it was. I mean, obviously, we know within the book he worked really closely with John Philpin too.
yes, he did.
The criminal profiler. Definitely had a ton of access to all the law enforcement that was actively or had previously worked on the cases as well. And in this article was when a couple of the people from the book were starting to be mentioned about suspects as well. Basically, the last big interview, like, so after we have the heads up that the book is actually out and that is covered, you were interviewed again by the Rutland Daily Herald, and it was published Saturday, July 29th in 1995. And now if we think about the timing, it was a big article. They definitely, gave you your due and let you have quotes. It was written with compassion. The tone in this article really outlined your frustration, outlined your frustration. I mean, by this time, think about the timing of it, right? Almost 7 years later, no arrest.
Yeah, I remember that. And I was I was frustrated because we had done Unsolved Mysteries and the tips came in and nothing was coming about it. I was really hoping at that time, really hoping that at least my case would have been solved with Unsolved Mysteries. And year after year, I mean, this is 3 years after Unsolved Mysteries, and I can remember getting very frustrated. I was calling them all the time.
Yep.
All the time I was calling them for at least a year. But nothing. Nothing came about.
Yep.
And I think I was frustrated at that time too, because that's when a lot of people started coming knocking on my door.
Yep. That was actually in this article.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're just, we've gotten a ton of tips. You're extremely frustrated with law enforcement and the fact that, there's like, do your job, catch this guy. I live in fear. There's so many more publications doing stories. And you even actually quoted and outlined that the Chronicles had done a piece. And after the Chronicles had actually aired too, that's when a person showed up at your house bringing information and a photograph of, somebody you thought, warranted checking out. And when you called the police, They just didn't want to follow up.
Yeah.
Yep. So in response to, like, after they had spoken with you, they got on the phone with New Hampshire State Police. Insert Dave Kelly from New Hampshire State Police, who was interviewed for this specific article. And he said that every single tip that he gets logged and gets looked into. And he was just recently put as the head of the newly formed Historic Case Unit. At that time in 1995, there were 87 unsolved murders and cases, including yours.
Wow.
Yep. So he was the person. So as you can see, they're trying to like sort of like shift and sort of like divert and like build like a new structure for the cases. So I was like, that's interesting information. And that's the individual that was involved at that time. And a specific quote to him that was published in this article directly, he said, I will be working with the FBI on such things as creating a profile of the murder or murderers and looking to see if there are any similar cases nationwide. He specifically said that about your case.
Never happened.
Yep.
Never happened. They never worked with the FBI. Never happened. Lie, lie, lie.
Yep. When I saw that, and especially because I saw the quote of it, I was like, but that never happened.
Never happened.
Yep. So I was like, appeasing a reporter, apparently. And then, yeah. So
They're so good at that.
Now
they don't even talk to reporters. They don't talk to anybody about anything.
I know. So
that
was a ton of digging, a lot of going down memory lane. I think early on in one article too, if I just backtrack just a little bit, I think that someone told police that they had encountered you arguing with a couple of men in the parking lot before your attack or something like that. But because they were saying like, oh, your chain of events didn't add up with this, witness. But I think they were mixing that up with the Bow, New Hampshire woman.
Yeah.
Because it was confirmed that she actually was arguing with people in a parking lot before. I think that was just confusing. I think they were mixing up cases because I was like, no. So.
No, that never happened.
Yep.
There was only one.
Yes, there was.
Only one monster.
So how do you feel after going through all that?
Going down memory lane, boy.
Oh.
Interesting.
Yeah. Some of it most.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say some of it most definitely is interesting, and certainly didn't want to take you back down memory lane for any sort of bad reasons, but maybe just a heads up. This is now you might understand a little bit more now too, like a little bit more of like a solid timeline based off of like the articles and stuff like that. That's another one of the reasons why I really wanted you to just sort of like hear it as well and be able to hear your response to it and hear if you could clarify, a couple of things and that sort of thing. So now you know how long you were probably in surgery for. Now you know the exact time, like when they were in your room interviewing you, when the composite went out, those sort of things,
Yeah, because a lot of these articles I never saw. Like the first 2 or 3 days after my attack while I was in the hospital, I never saw those articles.
Right.
They were all kept from me. Yeah, and for good reason.
Yes.
I totally understand.
Yes.
But it was probably a good week after when I first saw the first article, or first saw my first article that I read. That was interesting. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you for doing that.
Of course. Thank you for doing this with me. Like I said, I've always wanted to personally and specifically dive in a little bit, and especially, me, I kind of will focus in on something, and especially if I can get it tangibly too. I was able to have the opportunity. We literally have electronic copies of all of this information now too.
That's awesome.
For your reference, as we should.
Yeah.
So I was like, it's just a matter of going through and just digging and sort of doing some, more due diligence and that sort of thing. Something I had always wanted to do. I just had never carved out the time to do it. So
it's still overwhelming to me how much I was in the news at the time of my attack.
Yeah.
after my attack. Just it's still overwhelming
Yeah.
to think how much I was in the news.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It's weird.
Mm.
And I was only 22 and I was dealing with all that shit.
Yep.
22 and dealing with all that shit
Mm-hmm.
and being a mom
Yep.
or getting ready to be a mom.
Mhm.
And it's kind of mind blowing. How'd I
Yeah.
do it? How'd I do that?
Because you are badass.
I just processing. How did I do that at that age?
Mm-hmm. It's your sheer will and determination, I think, right? It's you're a fighter. You're a fighter, you're a survivor. There
Yeah.
was, and it's funny too, because sometimes when people come back and they sort of reflect after being through traumatic situations or horrific or unbearable situations, and people will stand there and ask them, like, how did you do it? And a lot of times people will respond in, I had no choice.
Yeah.
I wasn't given a choice, right? You didn't ask for what happened to you, and you really weren't given a choice. I mean, the choice that you had was live or not. You chose to fight and
I
survive.
did, but it's like you know,
Mm-hmm.
after that, there was so much going on. I remember it got heavy.
Oh,
It
of
got
course.
heavy.
Yeah,
Cried a lot of tears back then.
I could only imagine.
I did. But this was good. I was it's nice going down memory lane and yeah, it really gives I mean a lot of the time frame I have lost over the years because I haven't really thought about it.
Mhm.
The total the time frame or whatever. But yeah, that was interesting. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you for doing that.
Of course. Thank you. And yeah, and now all of our, listeners have a little bit more of a solid time frame too. But they possibly had some of those questions as well.
Yeah.
So thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Amanda.
And thank you all for listening to Invisible Tears. Stay safe. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of Invisible Tears. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast to hear all future episodes. Click into our link tree too in the episode description to find and follow us on all our social medias. And it also links to our website, invisible-tears.com, where you can keep current on any events that may be coming up, read more about Jane and the team, and read more about all the Connecticut River Valley unsolved cases. Evil may exist in this world, but we will not let it win. See you next episode.